The Silent Watchers. The conference hall of the stellar assembly floated in the void between stars, a massive ring of crystalline metal that housed representatives from 47 different species. For 4 centuries, this had been humanity's second home. Earth's diplomatic corps had spent generations building bridges, negotiating treaties, and preventing wars between species that had been fighting since before humans discovered fire. They were good at it, perhaps too good. Ambassador Sarah Chen stood at the observation deck, watching the swirl of ships coming and going from the station. Freighters from the Kelthran Collective, science vessels from the Orvathi Union, even a few pleasure cruisers carrying tourists eager to see the legendary assembly in person. Peace had made the galaxy prosperous. Trade routes that once required armed escorts now operated with nothing more than basic navigation beacons. Conflicts that might have sparked decades-long wars were now resolved in committee meetings. Humanity had helped build this peace, and Sarah was proud of that legacy. Behind her, the door slid open with a soft hiss. Ambassador Marcus Webb entered, his face grim. Sarah knew that expression. She had seen it before, usually right before something terrible happened. They hit Research Station Meridian, Marcus said without preamble. 3 hours ago, the Xanthari fleet dropped out of hyperspace and opened fire without warning. No communication, no demands, just weapons. Sarah felt her stomach drop. Meridian was a joint scientific facility, staffed by researchers from 8 different species. Humans, Kelthrans, Orvathi, and others working together to study rare stellar phenomena. It was everything the assembly stood for, a symbol of cooperation and shared knowledge. Survivors, she asked, though she already knew the answer from Marcus's face. 43 out of 4,000. The station's core breached before they could evacuate. Most died instantly when the atmosphere vented. Marcus walked to the window, standing beside her. Sarah, 2,000 of them were human. Scientists, engineers, support staff, families. The Xanthari Empire had been a problem for decades. They were a species that had evolved on a harsh world where only the strongest survived. Their philosophy was simple and brutal. Power determined right. The weak existed to serve the strong. Compassion was a disease that weakened civilizations. For years they had been expanding their territory, absorbing smaller species through intimidation and force. The assembly had tried sanctions, diplomatic pressure, and economic isolation. Nothing worked. The Xanthari simply didn't care what other species thought. The assembly is meeting in 2 hours, Marcus continued. The Kelthran delegation is already calling for a strongly worded resolution. The Orvathi want to form a committee to investigate. Everyone wants to talk. Sarah closed her eyes. She had been doing this job for 15 years. She had negotiated peace between species that had been enemies for centuries. She had helped write treaties that saved billions of lives. But she also knew when talking was pointless. The Xanthari had just murdered 4,000 innocent people to make a point. Words wouldn't stop them. "What does Earth want us to do?" she asked. Marcus handed her a data tablet. On it was a single line of text, a priority message from the Terran Council. Sarah read it twice, not quite believing what she was seeing. Withdraw all personnel. Return home immediately. Further instructions to follow. That was it. No demands for justice. No calls for action. Just come home. The assembly meeting was chaos. 47 species all trying to speak at once. Their translation devices creating a cacophony of overlapping voices. The Kelthran ambassador was demanding economic sanctions. The Orvathi wanted a peacekeeping force. The smaller species were terrified, worried they might be next. And in the center of it all, the Xanthari representative stood with his arms crossed, completely unmoved. Warlord Kresh was typical of his species. Nearly 3 meters tall, covered in armored scales that could stop most small arms fire. With eyes that seemed to calculate the value of everything they looked at. He had been sent to the assembly not to negotiate, but to observe. The Xanthari Empire didn't believe in equals. They believed in predators and prey. The research station violated territorial boundaries, Kresh said, his voice cutting through the noise. Xanthari space is sovereign. Trespassers were eliminated. This is our right. Meridian was in neutral space, the Kelthran ambassador shouted. The station had operated there for 50 years. Neutral space is a fiction created by the weak, Kresh replied. Space belongs to those strong enough to claim it. You knew our boundaries were expanding. You chose to ignore reality. Sarah stood up. The movement was simple, but something about it made the entire chamber fall silent. She had earned respect over her years here. When she spoke, people listened. Ambassador Chen, the assembly speaker, said, "Does Earth wish to address this matter?" Sarah looked around the chamber. She saw fear in many faces, hope in others. They wanted Earth to fix this like humanity had fixed so many problems before. They wanted her to find the right words, the perfect compromise, the diplomatic solution that would make everything better. She thought about the 2,000 humans who died at Meridian, scientists who had dedicated their lives to expanding knowledge, engineers who kept the station running, support staff who made sure everyone had what they needed. Some of them had families back on Earth, children who would grow up without parents, partners who would never see their loved ones again. "Earth has no statement at this time," Sarah said quietly. The chamber erupted. Species shouted questions, demanded explanations, begged for leadership. The Kelthran ambassador looked betrayed. The Orvathi seemed confused. Even the speaker appeared shocked. Sarah gathered her things and walked toward the exit. Marcus followed, along with the rest of the human delegation. As they passed the Xanthari representative, Kresh laughed. "The humans run away," he said loud enough for everyone to hear. "4 centuries of peace have made them soft. They talk about justice but do nothing when tested. This is why the strong will always rule and the weak will always serve." Sarah stopped. For just a moment she turned to look at Kresh. She didn't say anything. She just looked at him with an expression he couldn't quite read. Then she continued walking. The human delegation left the assembly that day. All of them. From every committee, every peacekeeping mission, every diplomatic post across the galaxy, they simply packed their things and went home. Earth's embassies closed. Human trade ships returned to port. The vast network of connections that humanity had spent 400 years building just stopped. The galaxy didn't understand. Many species saw it as abandonment. Others thought it was grief. A few wondered if humanity was simply giving up, retreating into isolation because they couldn't handle the reality of violence. The Xanthari Empire laughed. They saw confirmation of what they had always believed. Humans were weak. 4 centuries without war had turned them into soft, frightened creatures who ran at the first sign of real conflict. Warlord Kresh sent a message to the Xanthari High Command. The human territory was undefended. Their worlds were rich with resources. Their population was large but passive. They would be easy prey. 3 Xanthari battle fleets began moving toward human space. What none of them knew, what none of them could have known, was that humanity had never stopped preparing for war. They had just gotten very, very good at hiding it. 400 years earlier, humanity had nearly destroyed itself. The colonial wars had turned Earth's solar system into a battlefield. Mars fought against Earth. The Belt fought against Mars. Europa's colonies declared independence and attacked anyone who came near. Nuclear weapons cracked moons. Kinetic strikes shattered cities. Bioweapons turned entire habitats into tombs. When it finally ended, billions were dead and humanity stood on the edge of extinction. The survivors made a choice. They would rebuild. They would reach for the stars. But they would never forget what they had learned. War was in human nature. The capacity for violence was written into their DNA, carved by millions of years of evolution. You couldn't erase it. You could only choose not to use it. So humanity built 2 civilizations. One was public, the face they showed the galaxy. Diplomats and scientists, artists and teachers, merchants and explorers. Earth joined the Stellar Assembly and became the voice of peace. They negotiated treaties, prevented conflicts, and helped build a galaxy where different species could coexist. But beneath that surface, in places the galaxy never saw, the other civilization continued. Military academies that never closed. Shipyards hidden in the asteroid belts of uninhabited systems. Research facilities working on weapons no one knew existed. War colleges where strategists studied every conflict in galactic history, looking for patterns and weaknesses. And soldiers. Millions of soldiers who trained constantly, waiting for a call that might never come. Earth called it the Guardian Protocol. A promise that humanity would always be ready to defend itself, but would only fight when there was no other choice. For 4 centuries, that choice had never come. Human soldiers trained, aged, and retired without ever seeing combat. Some questioned whether the protocol was necessary. Maybe humanity really had evolved beyond war. Maybe the old fears were just paranoia. Then the Xanthari killed 2,000 humans and laughed about it. Deep beneath the surface of Luna, in a facility that officially didn't exist, alarms began to sound. The Guardian Protocol had been activated. After 400 years of silence, Earth was going to war. Admiral James Kovar had been waiting for this moment his entire life. He was third-generation Guardian Protocol, following in the footsteps of his grandmother and mother. He had trained for 40 years, studying every aspect of warfare from ancient Earth history to modern stellar combat. He had commanded simulated fleets in 10,000 scenarios, facing every possible enemy in every possible situation. He knew tactics that hadn't been used in centuries, strategies that existed only in classified databases, and he had never fired a shot in anger. Now, standing in the command center of humanity's first fleet, he looked at the tactical display showing 3 Xanthari battle groups entering human space. Each group had 50 ships, dreadnoughts, carriers, destroyers, and support vessels. They were confident, moving in standard formation without any attempt at stealth. They thought they were hunting prey. They had no idea they were walking into a trap. "All ships report ready, Admiral," his executive officer said. "Fleet deployment is complete." "We have eyes on all 3 enemy groups," Kovar nodded. Around him, the command center hummed with quiet efficiency. Officers monitored their stations, watching data streams from hundreds of sources. This was what they had trained for. This was what humanity had prepared for. 4 centuries of peace bought with constant readiness. "Send a message on all frequencies," Kovar said. "Text only. Make sure the Xanthari receive it." His communications officer worked quickly, then nodded. The message went out, broadcast across every known channel. Simple words that would change everything. "You killed our people. You mocked our restraint. You mistook patience for weakness. This was your choice. Now face the consequence." The Xanthari fleet commanders received the message and laughed. More empty words from frightened humans. They continued their advance, weapons powered up, ready to crush whatever token resistance Earth might offer. They never saw the human fleet until it was too late. Ships that had been hiding in the darkness using stealth technology decades ahead of anything the galaxy had seen suddenly appeared, not behind the Xanthari, not in front of them, all around them, in a perfect 3-dimensional sphere of overlapping fire zones. The first Xanthari ship died before its commander could even give an order. A spike of magnetically accelerated tungsten, traveling at a significant fraction of light speed, punched through its shields like they weren't even there. The projectile went through the ship's armor, through its reactor core, and out the other side. The ship broke apart, its hull unable to contain the forces tearing it apart from within. Then the rest of the human fleet opened fire, and the galaxy learned what 400 years of preparation really meant. The storm breaks. The battle lasted 17 minutes. 17 minutes that rewrote everything the galaxy thought it knew about humanity. The Xanthari had been fighting wars for 3,000 years. Their empire had conquered 42 species. Their military doctrine was refined through countless campaigns, their weapons tested against every known defense. Their commanders were veterans who had spent lifetimes studying warfare. They were confident because they had earned that confidence through victory after victory. None of it mattered. Human ships moved like nothing the Xanthari had ever encountered. They didn't maneuver like spacecraft. They moved like predators, using 3-dimensional space in ways that seemed to defy physics. A Xanthari dreadnought would fire at where a human ship was, only to find it had already moved. Not jump to hyperspace. Not use conventional thrusters. It simply wasn't there anymore, repositioning with a speed and precision that made tracking impossible. The weapons were worse. The Xanthari had shields designed to stop plasma, lasers, and particle beams. They had armor that could absorb hits from fusion warheads. None of it helped against kinetic kill vehicles traveling at relativistic speeds. The projectiles were simple. Just metal, shaped and hardened, accelerated to velocities that turned them into something between a bullet and a meteor. When they hit, they released energy equivalent to nuclear weapons, but without radiation or electromagnetic pulses. Just pure kinetic force that tore through shields, armor, and hull like tissue paper. But the truly terrifying part wasn't the technology. It was the coordination. Every human ship moved in perfect synchronization with every other ship. When one vessel repositioned, 3 others adjusted to cover the gap. When a Xanthari ship tried to retreat, it found itself in a crossfire from angles it hadn't even known were vulnerable. The human fleet didn't fight like individual ships. It fought like a single organism with dozens of bodies, each one perfectly aware of what all the others were doing. Warlord Kresh's flagship, the Dominant Will, tried to break through the human formation. It was the pride of the Xanthari fleet, a ship that had destroyed entire planetary defense networks. Its forward batteries unleashed a barrage that should have vaporized anything in its path. The human ships simply weren't there. They had moved before the weapons fired, predicting the attack pattern and flowing around it like water around a stone. Then they returned fire. Not at the Dominant Will. At the 3 escort destroyers protecting it. All 3 ships died simultaneously, their reactors breaching in perfect unison. Kresh suddenly found his flagship alone, surrounded by enemies with no support and no cover. All ships, full retreat, Kresh ordered. Jump to hyperspace immediately. But the human fleet had positioned themselves perfectly. Every escape vector was covered. Every jump point was targeted. When Xanthari ships tried to charge their hyperspace drives, they found human vessels already waiting at the coordinates they needed to reach. The humans had predicted every possible retreat before the battle even started. Kresh's communications officer was screaming into the transmitter, trying to reach the other 2 battle groups. Both had fallen silent. The tactical display showed nothing but debris fields where proud Xanthari fleets had been minutes before. Incoming transmission, the communications officer said, his voice shaking, from the human flagship. Admiral Kovar's face appeared on the screen. He didn't look angry. He didn't look triumphant. He just looked tired, like someone doing a necessary but unpleasant task. Warlord Kresh, Kovar said, you have one opportunity. Surrender your ships. Your crews will be detained but unharmed. You will be returned to your empire with a message. Refuse, and we will destroy you. Kresh felt something he had never experienced before in combat. Fear. Not the adrenaline rush of danger, but genuine existential terror. In 17 minutes, the humans had annihilated 3 battle groups, 150 ships, tens of thousands of Xanthari warriors, and they had done it without losing a single vessel. You cannot do this, Kresh said, trying to find his authority. The Assembly will condemn these actions. You violated every principle of civilized warfare. You attacked without declaration. You used forbidden weapons. You will be sanctioned, isolated, destroyed by the combined might of the galaxy. Kovar's expression didn't change. We withdrew from the Assembly. We asked for nothing. We threatened no one. You came to our space. You came to kill our people just like you killed them at Meridian. This isn't a violation of galactic law. This is self-defense, and we're very, very good at it. We are Xanthari, Kresh shouted. We do not surrender. We do not retreat. We fight until victory or death. Then you choose death, Kovar said quietly. I'm sorry. The transmission ended. Kresh opened his mouth to give orders, to rally his warriors to die with honor as Xanthari had always died. He never got the chance. The Dominant Will shuddered as kinetic strikes hit it from 6 different angles simultaneously. The impacts were precisely calculated, destroying weapons, engines, and shield generators while leaving the crew sections intact. In 5 seconds, the most powerful warship in the Xanthari fleet was reduced to a helpless hulk, drifting in space with its crew alive but completely unable to fight or flee. The rest of Kresh's battle group surrendered within minutes. News of the battle spread across the galaxy with the speed of hyperspace communications. At first, many species refused to believe it. Humanity, the peaceful mediators who had spent 4 centuries avoiding conflict, had destroyed 3 Xanthari battle groups in less than 20 minutes. It seemed impossible. Some thought it was propaganda. Others believed the Xanthari were exaggerating a minor skirmish to excuse their failure. Then the sensor recordings arrived. Multiple independent sources, from merchant ships and observation posts scattered throughout the region. They all showed the same thing. The Xanthari fleet entering human space, the sudden appearance of human ships, the brief, utterly one-sided battle, and the debris fields that marked where Xanthari vessels had been. The Stellar Assembly convened an emergency session. For the first time in the organization's history, the human delegation's seats were empty. Species that had relied on Earth's diplomatic skills for generations suddenly had to face this crisis alone. The arguments went in circles. Some called for sanctions against humanity. Others pointed out that the Xanthari had been the aggressors. A few quietly wondered if humanity had been this powerful all along, hiding their strength behind a mask of peaceful diplomacy. The Kelthran ambassador tried to contact Earth directly. His messages went unanswered. The Orvathi sent a delegation to Earth's solar system. They were turned back at the outer planets by polite but firm warnings from automated defense platforms. Humanity wasn't accepting visitors. They weren't explaining themselves. They were done talking. The Xanthari Empire's response was predictable. The High Command declared total war against humanity. They called for every warrior, every ship, every resource to be mobilized for the destruction of Earth. Ancient pride demanded vengeance. 3 battle groups destroyed, thousands of warriors dead. The most powerful military force in the galaxy humiliated by a species they had dismissed as weak. It could not stand. Warlord Kresh returned to Xanthari space in a damaged escape pod, knelt before the Supreme Commander and told him everything. The speed of human ships, the precision of their weapons, the perfect coordination of their tactics. He expected to be executed for his failure. Instead, the Supreme Commander listened carefully, asked detailed questions, and then did something Kresh had never seen him do before. He smiled. "They think they have shown us their strength," the Supreme Commander said. "They destroyed 3 battle groups and believe we will fear them. They do not understand Xanthari. We are not like the soft species of the Assembly. We do not break. We learn, we adapt, we overcome." The Supreme Commander turned to his war council. "The humans have revealed their weapons. Now we know what we face. We will develop countermeasures. We will study their tactics. And we will crush them with numbers they cannot defeat, no matter how advanced their technology." Within days, the Xanthari Empire began the largest military mobilization in its history. Shipyards worked around the clock. Warriors were pulled from garrison duties across the empire. Reserve fleets that hadn't been activated in decades powered up and began training exercises. The Xanthari were preparing to throw everything they had at humanity, and the galaxy watched in horror, wondering if they were about to witness the extinction of Earth. Admiral Kovar stood in the strategy room of Luna Base, looking at the intelligence reports. The Xanthari were gathering a fleet of more than 3,000 ships. It would take them months to fully assemble and coordinate such a force, but once they were ready, they would come at Earth with everything they had. It was the largest invasion fleet ever assembled in galactic history. "Can we stop them?" his executive officer asked. Kovar studied the tactical projections. 3,000 ships. Even with humanity's technological advantage, those were difficult odds. The kinetic kill vehicles were devastating but required careful targeting and time to reload. Human ships were faster and more maneuverable, but they weren't invincible. A lucky hit could destroy them just as easily as any other vessel. And the Xanthari would be ready this time, expecting human tactics, preparing countermeasures. "Militarily," "Yes," Kovar said finally. "We can defeat 3,000 ships. We can probably defeat 10,000. But not without losses, and not without revealing more of our capabilities. Every weapon we use, every tactic we employ, gives the galaxy information about how we fight. The next enemy will be better prepared. So what do?" Kovar looked at the star map, showing Earth at the center, surrounded by the vast Xanthari Empire. 400 years of peace had been built on the belief that talking could solve problems. Sometimes it could, sometimes it did. But there were species in the galaxy who only understood one language: power. "We make sure there isn't a next enemy," Kovar said. "We end this war so completely, so decisively, that no one will ever make this mistake again." The plan that emerged from Luna Base was audacious to the point of insanity. Instead of waiting for the Xanthari fleet to attack, humanity would strike first. Not at the fleet itself, but at something far more important. The Xanthari High Command had been in power for 600 years, ruling through fear and military might. They had built their entire civilization on the belief that strength was everything. Humanity would prove them right, just not in the way they expected. 3 weeks after the first battle, a single human ship appeared in orbit above Xanthar Prime, the Xanthari homeworld. Not a warship, a diplomatic vessel, unarmed and unshielded, broadcasting on all frequencies with a simple message: "We are here to talk." The Xanthari orbital defense platforms locked onto the ship immediately. Hundreds of weapons capable of turning the vessel into vapor, trained on this impossible target. The Supreme Commander himself took the communication, his face twisted with rage. "You dare come here? To our homeworld? After we declared war? Your ship is forfeit. Your crew is dead." Admiral Kovar's face appeared on the screen. He was in full dress uniform now, medals and insignia marking decades of service. Behind him, the bridge of his ship was calm and quiet. "Then kill us," Kovar said simply. "Fire your weapons, destroy this ship, and understand what happens next." On the tactical displays across Xanthar Prime, new contacts appeared. Dozens of them. Hundreds. Human ships dropping out of stealth all across Xanthari space. Not just near Xanthar Prime. Near every major Xanthari world, every shipyard, every military installation. They had been there for weeks, hidden and waiting, close enough to strike before any defense could respond. "We didn't come here to conquer you," Kovar continued. "We didn't come to kill your people or destroy your worlds. We came to end this war. You have a choice. Continue fighting and we will dismantle your empire piece by piece. We will destroy every fleet, every military installation, every weapon you possess. We won't harm civilians. We won't occupy your worlds. We will simply remove your ability to threaten anyone ever again." The Supreme Commander stared at the display, seeing human ships positioned to destroy everything the Xanthari Empire had built. With their stealth technology and kinetic weapons, they could reduce Xanthari military power to nothing before reinforcements could even respond. Centuries of conquest, of careful expansion, of building the most powerful empire in the galaxy. All of it was suddenly at the mercy of a species they had dismissed as weak. "Or," Kovar said, "you can accept peace. Real peace. Not the peace of the assembly where everyone talks and nothing changes. Peace backed by the understanding that if you threaten humanity again, if you harm our people, if you even think about attacking us, we will return, and next time we won't offer terms." The bridge of Kovar's ship was silent. Every officer knew they were one command away from starting the largest battle in human history, or ending a war without firing another shot. The Supreme Commander looked at his war council. He saw the same calculation in their eyes that he felt in his hearts. Pride demanded they fight. Honor required vengeance. But survival, the most basic instinct of any species, demanded they acknowledge reality. The humans had won before the Xanthari even knew there was a war. "I accept your terms," the Supreme Commander said, each word feeling like broken glass. "The Xanthari Empire will not engage human forces. We will not enter human space. We will cease all hostilities immediately." Kovar nodded. "Your surviving ships will be returned to you. The crews we captured will be released unharmed. We will withdraw from Xanthari space and return to our territory. But understand this. We are not returning to the assembly. We are not going back to the way things were. Humanity tried peace through diplomacy. When that failed, you learned we can enforce peace through strength. Choose which version of humanity you prefer to deal with." The transmission ended. Within hours, human ships began withdrawing from Xanthari space, vanishing back into the darkness as silently as they had appeared. The Xanthari Empire, which had been preparing for the largest military campaign in its history, stood down. Warriors returned to their barracks. Ships powered down. The war was over. News reached the Stellar Assembly within days. The reaction was complicated. Relief that the war had ended without massive casualties. Fear at the demonstration of human military power. Confusion about what humanity would do next. For 400 years, Earth had been the voice of peaceful resolution. Now they had proven they could enforce their will through force when necessary. Ambassador Sarah Chen returned to Earth after the war ended. She had spent weeks in transit, thinking about what had happened. 2,000 humans dead at Meridian. 3 Xanthari battle groups destroyed. An empire brought to its knees without a single human civilian casualty. She should have felt victorious. Instead, she just felt sad. She found Admiral Kovar at a memorial service in Geneva, where the names of the Meridian victims were being read aloud. 2,000 names taking hours to complete. Scientists, engineers, families, people who had dedicated their lives to knowledge and cooperation, killed because they were in the wrong place when violence came calling. "We won," Sarah said, standing beside him. "Did we?" Kovar replied, not taking his eyes off the memorial. "We stopped the Xanthari. We showed the galaxy that humanity can't be pushed around. But we also showed them what we're capable of. There are probably a dozen species out there right now, looking at what we did, wondering if they're next. Fear is a powerful deterrent, but it's not the same as respect. So what now?" Kovar finally turned to look at her. "Now we rebuild. Not the same kind of peace we had before. That was built on the assumption that everyone wanted to avoid conflict. We know better now. Some species will always choose violence, so we build peace with both hands. One hand offers friendship, cooperation, and mutual benefit. The other hand holds weapons, ready but unused, and everyone gets to choose which hand they want to shake. Sarah thought about that. It wasn't the ideal she had worked toward for 15 years. But ideals didn't survive contact with reality. The galaxy wasn't full of species who all wanted the same things. Some valued peace, others valued power. Humanity had tried to be the voice of the first group. Now they would have to be the guardians against the second. The Assembly wants us back, Sarah said. 12 species have sent formal requests. They want our help negotiating with the Xanthari, setting up peacekeeping forces, mediating disputes. They're scared. They want humans to fix things. And what did you tell them? Sarah smiled slightly. I told them we'll think about it. But things are different now. We're not coming back as mediators. We're coming back as partners, equal partners. And if someone decides to repeat the Xanthari's mistake, they'll get the same education. Around them, the memorial service continued, names being read, lives remembered. 2,000 people who died because they believed in cooperation and exploration. They deserved to be honored, but they also deserved to be protected. Humanity had tried protecting them with words. When that failed, they had used something older, something that had been part of human nature since the first ancestor picked up a rock to defend their family. The galaxy had called Earth peaceful. They had mistaken 400 years of restraint for weakness. They had seen humanity's reluctance to fight as an inability to fight. The Xanthari had learned the truth. Peace wasn't weakness. It was a choice. And when that choice was taken away, when humanity was forced to fight, they fought with the same intensity they brought to everything else. 400 years of peace had been built on hope. The next 400 would be built on reality. Humanity would still offer friendship, still seek cooperation, still work toward a galaxy where different species could live together, but they would do it with open eyes, knowing that not everyone wanted peace, and for those who chose violence, humanity would be ready. The sleeping giant had awakened. The galaxy would have to decide if they wanted Earth as a friend or as an enemy. But they would never again make the mistake of thinking humanity was harmless. The names continued to be read, each one a reminder of why humanity fought, not for conquest, not for glory, for the simple right to exist in peace, and for the equally simple promise that anyone who threatened that peace would face consequences they couldn't imagine. They had said Earth was peaceful. They had been right, but they had forgotten that peace isn't the absence of strength, it's the restraint of strength. And restraint, like patience, has limits. The Xanthari had found those limits. The rest of the galaxy had been warned.